Good morning and welcome. Thank you for joining us for the launch of this exciting new plant-based training program by award-winning HIT Training in collaboration with Quorn. I think if ever there was a good time to be injecting some positive inspiration to the industry, it's now. So a fantastic achievement. I'm Richard Fox. I'm your host for the whole event. As a plant-based chef, writer and presenter myself, this is obviously a great privilege. And I have to say that on a personal level, given my wholesale transition from old school carnivore chef some 3 years ago to 100% plant-based, this is a resource that could have saved me hours, weeks, if not months of internet trawling as I reposition my skills. So a fantastic opportunity for chefs at every strata of the industry. A quick intro into the running order for today. Our first 10 minutes, I will be joined by Quorn Head of Marketing for Food Service, Claire Roper, followed by Principal of HIT Chef Academy, Paul Mannering, and Rory Mitchell, HIT Training Chef Academy Lead Trainer, when they'll be giving you the lowdown on the key trends and insights into plant-based. From 10:45 approximately to 11:30, two fantastic cooking segments with Mark Belford, HIT Chef Academy Vice Principal, and Chantelle Nicholson, Chef Patron of Tredwells and All's Well in London. We're going to take a 5-minute break then. I'm sure you'll all need it. You can make a cup of tea, do whatever you need to do. And then we're going to come back to the final cooking segment with Mark, who's going to make an amazing plant-based chocolate dessert. And then finally, we're going to have a Q&A where you can put your questions to our esteemed plant-based panel of experts, which you can submit via the chat box on your screens. Welcome, Claire. I guess you've been pretty busy judging. Hello, welcome, Claire. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good, thank you. Good, very pleased to be here.
Very well, thanks, Claire. I beg your pardon?
I'm very pleased to be here.
And we are delighted to welcome you as well, and thanks for giving up your time. I'm sure you must be pretty busy at the moment, judging by the proliferation of Quorn products that I see in the marketplace these days.
Yes, no, I think this has been a very exciting Veganuary. I think the biggest that they've ever seen. In the first 2 weeks, I think it had already surpassed the number that had been there last year. So yeah, it really shows that meat-free eating has become a bit of a behaviour, not a trend anymore. So we're not following a trend, we're actually changing how we actually behave.
Brilliant. So very simply, why is plant-based even more important now than it has been in the past?
I think for that, that we can really see that it's becoming a consumer behaviour, not just something that they're buying into as a trend. I think really interestingly, it's become a real requirement of eating out. So you can see from the research we've got there that 25% of consumers are demanding really a meat-free option when they're eating out of home for whatever meal that might be. So it's really become something that we need to respond to and give them that choice when they're out, not just offer them the odd alternative on a dusty menu in the back of the that you get out from the counter. This has really become something people are going to a restaurant or choosing a meal for.
Absolutely. I mean, clearly the original work that inspired Quorn, I mean, we're going back to the 60s here, was clearly ahead of its time. So how is Quorn planning now on building and developing for the future from where it is now?
Yeah, I would like to just point out I wasn't there from the start. But yeah, we were the early pioneers of meat-free.
I'm having a little trouble there.
Oh. You all right there, Richard?
Are you there, Claire?
I am, yes.
Excellent. We can hear you loud and clear now.
Oh, good. Yeah, so I was just saying I haven't been there from the start, but obviously Quorn was a pioneer of the meat-free industry. And our real ambition is to help reduce the impact on our health and the planet. For us, really, I think mycoprotein, our super protein, has always been at the heart of what we do. and it plays a really big role in helping people reduce the impact of what they eat on their own health and also on the planet. And I think, it's really important for us now to help be part of the training of people, to look at this trend and to look and really equip people in how they can create those delicious and innovative meals when it doesn't involve meat.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Claire. We're going to come back to you later on for our Q&A, but thanks for that insight. I'm going to bring in now HIT Chef Academy Principal Paul Mannering and lead trainer Rory Mitchell. Guys, welcome and congratulations on the course. I'm sure you feel like a bit of a breather now, don't you? But I'm sure your work is just beginning.
Yeah, good morning. It's been full steam ahead. So it's nice to see this, come out the other end and in partnership with Quorn. So yeah, really pleased with the end result.
Great stuff. Before we talk about the new plant-based course, Paul, can you give us a little bit of background on the HIT Chef Academy?
Yeah, the Chef Academy sort of first came about in 2015. Before that, we kind of did a lot of ad hoc training and supporting various clients and apprentices, and it was put in place to enrich and support apprentices on the new standards, and also for short courses and commercial. It became evident that when you look at some of the food groups required in the standards, there were a lot of sort of pinch points, gaps in knowledge, or sometimes lack of opportunity to engage with those foods on the menu. So the Chef Academy program was put in place to support apprentices and employers through that sort of vast content.
Brilliant. And what are operators looking for now? And how will this new course train chefs to meet those needs?
I think operators are looking for flexibility and accessibility in their training. It's a busy environment, obviously with the current situation as well. We're trying to engage with people and give them as many options to engage with the program as possible. So I think there's got to be that flexibility. They want the currency as well. They want things that sort of resonate with what's actually going on in the industry, as well as looking at some of those classics. They want to see innovation. They want to see stuff that's current and relevant to them.
Okay, Rory, I'd like to bring you in now. Just give us a top level overview of the program, what's entailed in it.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you can see on the screen at the moment, it's a really all-encompassing program. It's not just looking at certain areas. We envision this as a really all-rounder. So there's going to be 11 different modules, both e-learning and interactive online workshops, looking at a variety of different subject matters that are going to include plant-based ingredients, and also the 2 Chef Academy online workshops as well. Hopefully in the future they'll transition into actual face-to-face workshops as well.
Great stuff. Fantastic work. And thank you very much. So we'll see you again soon for the Q&A. Please don't go away. And now we're going to go over to Mark Belford for our very first cooking segment of the day. How are you?
I'm very well, Chef. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And welcome to the virtual cookery stage. A bit different to what you used to. But I guess lockdown's been a good time for you, has it, to develop and generate new ideas and get inspired for all the new projects you're involved in?
Yeah, completely. This new day and age that we're in has unfortunately pushed us all technophobic chefs towards laptops a little bit more to be filmed and to work on our digital skills, Chef.
Absolutely. So tell us the first dish you're going to be cooking for us today.
First dish up today will be a beautiful vegan Quorn piece empanada, and I'm going to serve that with some beautiful cauliflower and pomegranate, very seasonal at the moment, a little bit left over from December and the festivities, but full of health, full of nutrition. And I'm going to pair that with a little chimichurri as well. So we've got a little Argentinian, South American thing going on today.
You've got my mouth watering already, Chef. Sounds fantastic.
I'm going to be putting that little bit of a British twist on it with a beautiful Cornish cauliflower that I've got. And it's just using up some very humble ingredients that you could access quite easily, but full of nutrition, full of crunch, full of texture, full of flavour. And I've even got the much maligned Brussels sprout involved today as well. I don't think these guys get enough credit, and we're going to show them off today.
Fantastic, Mark. Great plan. Well, I'd better let you start cooking, and then we can have a chat about the wonderful Quorn that you're using in this. And you can tell us a bit about the plant-based cookery course that you've started as part of the HIT Chef Training Academy.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chef. So the first thing I'm going to do, as all good base start of dishes, onion, finely chopped. I want to cook this low. I want to cook this slow. So I'm just going to get that into the pan. I've got 1 tablespoon of oil going in there, Chef. A nice neutral oil, and I'm just going to get those onions in, and we're just going to start to sweat those down. I'm going to turn my induction up, and we're going to get some fire underneath, and we're going to get that going. So, Chef, I'm going to move on to the Quorn, the star of this show today. I'm using the Quorn vegan pieces. So this is a plant-based dish that's moving forward that hits every box, just harnessing the nature that is within this. So we've got the mycoprotein, a great source of protein, and also the fermentation process of this Quorn production. It's just wonderful for our gut, wonderful for our health. It's very prevalent at the moment, especially nutrition and health, and the benefits of having a good, balanced, varied diet can give us. Getting those fresh vegetables, getting those fresh fruits in our diets, but as well as pairing it up with the protein that we naturally need to move on with. Now, if I'm with Quorn, a lot of people will just throw it in, mix it around, send it, serve it. Not today. We're going to show it off. We're going to elevate it. We're going to give it some love. We're going to put it through a beautiful marinade, spices, with oil. I've got a little agave syrup in here as well. It just balances out that fermented tang that you get within the Quorn, which isn't a bad thing. We want that savory hit with it, but we're just trying to balance our dish out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get all my ingredients into the bowl. It's an incredibly simple process. So firstly, I start off agave syrup, beautiful golden nectar, got ground cumin, can't beat it, one of my favorite spices, has been for a very long time. Sweet paprika, Chef.
Very Spanish as well, that, isn't it?
Absolutely, Chef. I was trying to keep in keeping when creating this dish and just hitting all those boxes. Dried chili flakes, I think, are great. Less is more, less is more. You can build that flavor.
And of course, the agave syrup is a great substitute, isn't it, for honey, if you want to be completely vegan on this.
And completely, I mean, and nowadays, as we move forwards, 2021, the future, so much more plant-based products available in our supermarkets. It's not just the token gesture to have maybe a quarter of a shelf set aside. We're having whole portions of aisles, fridges put in place to house this material. It's beautiful.
Absolutely. And it seems to me that not a week goes by without a new plant-based product appearing on the shelves, and quality stuff too. It's a real feast for the senses. I mean, who could have ever thought of that a few decades ago?
My local town that I live in, very small rural community, my local supermarket stocks banana blossom. I mean, when do we ever think that would happen? The Quorn aisle, this can be hard to get hold of because people are now harnessing that meat-free Monday, that attitude towards dropping some meat proteins and replacing them with plant-based and just seeing the benefits of it. Now, as you can see, there we go. I've marinated it. We've got those beautiful colors. We've got the chili flakes in there. I'm working from frozen with this, Chef. I've not defrosted it, put it through any other process. I've taken it straight out of the freezer and just into a lovely bowl. But the one thing I do find that's beautiful about vegetable proteins and Quorn is such a good vehicle for flavor. If you treat it with a love, you get so much more back in your end result. Do you agree, Chef?
I do. It's the same as all things in life, isn't it, Mark?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said.
So, I mean, I love Quorn, and it's, as you say, so easy to work with. But I think when you find out how it's actually made, it's fascinating, and you end up appreciating it even more.
Well, completely. For something that's been around for thousands of years, we've only just started to harness it in the last, 25, 30 years. And the benefits to the body, I just think, why aren't we using more of this stuff?
We talked about natural fermentation of fungi here. aren't we, to make this micro protein.
Completely. And it's that balance of the gut, of the body, just the easy digestion, just all those benefits. As you said, Chef, just fermentation, filtered water, using this mycoprotein, and look what you end up with.
And the fiber content as well. I mean, apparently 90% of us don't get enough fiber in our diets. It's a frightening statistic.
High fiber, low in fat, delicious, nutritious, might I say, and you can be so innovative as a cook with it nowadays that the only limit is yourself. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, this is what I love about plant-based. I think it's because you've got to think more. You've just got to be focused. If you're just focused on cooking meat or fish, it's easy to be a lazy cook. But with plant-based, you've got to think more about contrasting textures, I think. You've got to put more thought into it, and that makes it kind of exciting.
So, Chef, I wish you were here. The smell is fantastic. Those onions, they're incredible. Just permeating the air, that sweet, nostalgic smell that you've got. They've just started to caramelize. So I know it's time to start building my dish now. Going to get my Quorn in and just start building. So the first thing I'm going to do, Chef, garlic. For me, a microplane, straight into that pan. Yourself, are you a big fan of the garlic, Chef?
I am, Chef. I love it. You know, one of my top tips as well is always to use twice as much as you think you actually need, because it does actually lose its flavor during the cooking process quite a lot. It's super healthy too, of course. And, you know, talking of Spanish classics, I rub it on toast with some extra virgin olive oil, ripe tomatoes squeezed over. Wonderful.
So the next thing up, Chef, root ginger. I want to give it that freshness, that fire. But one of the crimes I do see, Chef, is people using a peeler or a knife. For me, best tool, spoon. Gets in all those crevices, just takes off that papery outer edge.
Fantastic. So are you seeing, Mark, a growing interest in plant-based amongst young chefs in particular? I mean, you've been in the business, you know, like me, probably longer than we both care to remember. But, you know, I can remember years ago in restaurants, and you'd be asked for a vegetarian dish, you know, let alone a vegan dish, and there'd be rolling eyes. It wasn't embraced as it should have been. I was as guilty as the next chef back in those days. Are you seeing a shift in the way that people are thinking now?
Completely, Chef. I mean, and very much akin to your background and experiences. The frown that would come on when a check came in for a vegetarian dish or request, or maybe an allergen requirement, that was the culture, I'm afraid.
You know, I think one of the secrets is to not think about plant-based as simply having to offer a vegan alternative to an animal-based dish. It should stand completely on its own 2 feet, or not, obviously. So if you change your fundamental thinking and traditional learned behavior and start seeing it as a great dish in its own right, you know, it's the only way to satisfy a different consumer demand. And then you're on the right tracks.
Completely. I couldn't agree more, Chef. The ease that you can cook, you know, a piece of meat, a piece of fish. This, I just think it shows so much care. If you're reading through a menu, you get your classic flavor pairings that work, that you know that you need them to bring people into your dining room, but you'll get that loyal following that you can inspire, innovate, something that they won't necessarily do at home or think about even. And then suddenly you've hit a different market. And then that's how this industry and this train of thought with Plant Forward grows. People will go out looking in their supermarkets and thinking, I could do this at home. Building up my dish now, I'm using tomato puree just to give it that body and that bite. But with any tomato puree, I'm a big fan of just cooking it out for a minute or two, just taking that bitter edge off. I'm now going to go in with the much maligned Brussels sprout, and I'm just going to thinly shred it. I'm just going to halve them, and I'm just going to slice them. You're a big sprout fan, Chef?
I am. I'm a huge sprout fan. And I think they're massively underutilized too. I mean, there's so many more ways than just boiling. I mean, you could do purees, shred them as you're doing. I love them roasted as well, Mark. You know, just tossed in some oil, you know, maybe with a bit of smoked paprika in there, a few garlic granules, and then roasted in the oven with little char marks on the outside. And you get that crispiness as well. Wonderful.
So they've gone into the pan, Chef, and I'm just going to give those a stir around, just get them coated up.
Well, I think one of the big drivers as well, Mark, with plant-based is our growing awareness of the impact that our eating habits have on the environment as well. I mean, it's a huge factor. Nobody ever made that association a few years ago. I mean, intensive animal agriculture contributes more to greenhouse gas emissions than all the transport systems combined.
Completely and utterly. The amount of water just involved with the raising of cattle, for instance, is staggering. You know, litres and litres and litres to produce 1 litre of milk. You know, we need to start thinking a little bit more forward as this planet ever evolves and ever increases in population.
I think it's a great way to think the way you're talking about the food. And, you know, I think this is the conversation chefs should be having in their heads as they're cooking, getting excited about what you're doing. I mean, I always remember being told many years ago, I'll never forget it, the chef shouted at me as we do, and says, cook like an eater. And at the time I'm thinking, what are you talking about, chef? But it's true. It's so easy in the professional kitchen to get disassociated with the actual eating experience that the diner's going to have. But if you always keep that in your head, it will impact on the quality of your cooking.
Just going to give that a stir. I'm trying to ensure that, chef, when I'm doing this, my pan isn't overly greasy. My pan isn't overly wet. Got my spinach, chef, and I'm just going to put that in. I'm just going to divvy that out around the pan, working anti-clockwise, and that way I can just ensure everything's evenly spread. Now, the spinach has gone in, it's broken up. I've got that wonderful red. I've got that white contrast of the Quorn. I've got those light green sprouts running through. And I'm just going to add a touch of water. I want to create a steam. I want to hear a happy pan. And I almost want that, not quite a sauce, in between a sauce and not being a sauce. And that's gone in now. And that's literally 2 or 3 tablespoons tops. So next is the empanada dough, chef. I'm quite proud of this one. All I've done here, I've got my dry ingredients there, all weighed out, and I'm using spelt flour today, chef, one of the ancient grains that seems to be making a bit of a comeback.
I love those ancient grains. I love to combine flours as well. And again, it's using imagination and creativity and the joy of discovering and sourcing these great ingredients.
And in the pan that I've just melted down, soy milk and plant-based butter, and I've just brought them together.
It's based on the hot water crust pastry then?
Completely. I was just about to say one of my absolute favorites. And I'm just bringing that together now, and I'm just going to work that together. And I've used 90% of the liquid. It shouldn't be labor intensive. And this one's really not. A hot water paste, one of my favorite. And that is a wonderful, soft, pliable dough. You don't need to overwork it. We don't want to. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to chill that for half an hour.
So, Mark, I mean, you've worked across the hospitality spectrum, from fine dining to event catering and food service. You've got this huge experience. Do you think you've now found your calling with the training? It sounds like you have.
It's a step I took. I'd got to a certain stage in my career where I thought I needed something different. I enjoyed training. I enjoyed training people that came through my kitchens and sharing my knowledge. And I kind of just fell into it, thinking that I didn't have the background, the experience. You know, I think when trainers would come into the workplace, they're on such an elevated pedestal that you think, well, God, I never get to that part. But then looking back, I think I did have a fairly decent background of knowledge. But as tutors and part of HIT training, it's constant development. We're not allowed to stop. We have to be innovative. We have to keep up with trends within the catering industry. Takeaway being a massive one at the moment. You know, with the takeaway industry booming and people using that as an extra source of revenue, we've really had to look at our knowledge of that and, you know, getting restaurant quality food to people, but transported. And I'm going to roll this out to about 3 millimeters. I don't want it overly thick either. I want the star of the show to be the filling, to be the Quorn, and to be those beautiful vegetables.
I think the timing for introducing a professional plant-based training course is absolutely perfect now. And I think part of the growing interest in it is maybe partly a result of COVID. I mean, it's certainly been a catalyst. From a moment in time perspective, you know, you've got something that you can go out there with now and offer the industry in a time when it's just crying out for anything that's going to inspire it and help relight the fire.
Completely, chef, and that's what we try to do. We try to stay current. That's what we're here to do, and our dishes will ever evolve as well. All our repertoires are seasonal. So I'm going to cut these out, chef. I'm just going to run my knife around.
talking about Quorn as an ingredient, I mean, they've got so many different products out there too, haven't they? I mean, fantastic stuff. I mean, the Quorn vegan pieces that you're using are perfectly interchangeable, I guess, with other Quorn products, as well as your other flavors.
Completely. I've done a mix with the mints, which worked really, really well. Fooled my 12-year-old into it without any form of negotiation.
I mean, Quorn were really ahead of the game, weren't they, when they started in the 60s, when no one was talking about plant-based, and a tiny minority of people were vegan. But I think what's happening now is that the whole flexitarian thing that's taking off as well. You don't have to be vegan, do you, to start enjoying these amazing dishes?
No, completely not. And I think the thing I like about a lot of these products as well, Chef, they're made so well. There's a lot of high quality names, Quorn being one of them, that you can have this stuff in the freezer and it lasts. So I've got the discs of pastry cut out, Chef, and the first thing I'm going to do, just for that adhesive nature, but also it adds a little bit more moisture within the recipe. I've just got some cold water that I'm just going to ever so lightly rub over each of my empanada discs. So I'm going to take the cheese, Chef, and I'm going to place that in the center of my discs first. I found that if I do it this way, the heavier filling that sits on the top prevents all that cheese from spilling out. I want to keep it in there. I don't want it on the baking tray.
Like you say, Mark, there's so many different cheeses coming out now. I mean, I saw a mature cheddar style vegan cheese the other day, which is new on the market. It's fantastic. I did a wonderful mac and cheese the other day, and I swear you wouldn't know the difference.
Completely, Chef. This is what I've got here, and you get that mature, that tang. I've got my Quorn pieces here. Smell wonderful, all cooled down. I just use my spoon, and I'm just break them up. And that way I find that as opposed to getting one large lump of Quorn, you can get 5 or 6. And that just is for the eating pleasure. So I'm going to take about a dessert spoonful, give or take. And I'm just going to place that on, making sure I get a good mix of the sprouts, of the spinach, and get that assembled up.
It's a little health bomb, isn't it? And a flavor bomb.
Got my empanadas ready to go, and I'm just going to fill them up, Chef, make these beautiful little half-moon parcels. So on the board, I'm just going to fold them over, bringing one edge to the other. And I'm just going to push down as if you're making a little raviolo or something, a little tortellini. And I just crimp them away, clear off any excess.
It's a great little vessel as well for leftovers, isn't it?
Completely and utterly. And just the vegetables you could use here, some frozen peas running through your mix.
Thinking about the Quorn mince, for example, I mean, you might have made a plant-based spag bol, for example. You've got a bit of leftovers, maybe not enough for a couple of portions, but certainly plenty for a few tapas-style empanadas.
Fantastic, absolutely. A nice glass of wine on a winter's night. Now I'm going to go in, Chef. I've got a beautiful turmeric glaze, just some plant milk, a little bit of rapeseed oil, and half a teaspoon of turmeric.
This is the thing there are ways to replicate that egg or egg glaze as you're doing right there.
Completely, Chef. And also with this, I find if you're happy to get a slightly yellowed hand for a minute or two, like I'm quite happy to do so, I glaze both sides. I think it's just a nice little touch. All painted off. What I've found, Chef, through doing this, through trial and error, and it's been very upsetting when I have discovered it, I prick a tiny little hole in these empanadas just so I don't end up with a beautiful baking tray full of empanada, and I don't end up with an empanada itself. So up next, Chef, I'm going to knock up a little chimichurri. So I'm just going to run my knife through those. I want people to know the chili's there.
It's great to do a sauce, isn't it, or accompaniment as well that doesn't require any heating. I mean, just ambient makes life so much easier.
Completely, Chef, completely. Chili's in. I've got my garlic now, Chef. I've got some beautiful parsley as well. Stalk and all, get it in there.
This dish really exemplifies the importance of the concept of taste as you go, doesn't it?
Completely, Chef, completely and utterly. I've got a tablespoon of red wine vinegar. I'm just going to put that in. 60 mils, Chef, of just a beautiful mild olive oil. Pinch of salt just to get everything going. So next up, chef, cauliflower and pomegranate. People might think this is a bit of a strange combination, but I'm not using cauliflower florets today, chef. I am going to use the root, and I'm just going to take some thin slices of this cauliflower. So I'm going to get those into my beautiful terracotta bowl. Pomegranate seeds. Again, you can grab a pomegranate relatively cheaply. You can even get them all readily prepped, no husk, no fiber on them. And just those wonderful little jewels that pop in your mouth. The color, fantastic. And I'm just going to put 2 spoonfuls in there.
I mean, especially with the cauliflower, it's going to really highlight the color of those pomegranate seeds.
Complete, and almost stain it and bleach it, and it's going to look almost tie-dyed, which I think is a really, really lovely thing to do. In here, chef, I've got a tablespoon of agave syrup. I've got lime juice, and I've got the zest as well. I don't want to use it up. I really want that citrus, and I want that sweetness. I've got this wonderful product, rock chives. So they've got that garlicky edge, which will mirror the garlic that we've used in the other elements. And I think pomegranate and mint are wonderful friends together.
Yeah, you don't want to be over chopping that mint either, do you?
No, chef. I'm going to run my knife through once, maybe twice, and that's it. I don't want to pound that into the board. And we're just going to give that a nice little mix up and a stir through. So I'm just going to go to the oven and grab my empanadas. And wow, look at those. Fantastic, golden, crisp, that flaky, almost like a bit of a frosty morning, that salt on the top. Beautiful filling. I'll just hold those up. Got the spinach there. I can see the cheese has melted. Everything's just come together. It's moist. Firstly, I'm going to go in with that cauliflower and the pomegranate and those rock chives and mint. Very fresh, very fragrant. I'm going to place a couple of my cut empanadas on the top. I'm going to go on now with the chimichurri. We're just going to get that onto the dish. A lovely drizzle. And there we have a Quorn and vegan empanada with cauliflower and pomegranate and a chimichurri sauce. Chef, this is absolutely fantastic, and I'm just going to give you a final little tease on Zoom, but please, can we remain friends after this, you promise?
Chef, I am doffing my chef's hat to you, and it's absolutely sensational. I mean, you've totally captured what plant-based cooking and innovation and ingredients are all about there, Mark. Thank you so much. And now, by the magic of the internet, I'm heading off, virtually of course, to join our next guest chef, cookbook author, multi-award-winning chef patron of Tredwells and All's Well in London, Chantelle Nicholson. Well, welcome. I think the last time we spoke was probably midsummer last year, and you were just about to launch All's Well. So is all well at the moment? I hate to ask that question now.
It is a bit of a tricky question right now, but yes, it was. We opened All's Well at the end of October, so I got about 5 days of service in before the second lockdown, actually. But yeah, it's all is well considering.
Well, it's great to see a positive note, and I'm sure, and I've noticed this. I think with people who are with chefs who are right at the top of their game, you are innovative, you are naturally a problem solver, and I'm sure that puts you in good stead for finding solutions, you know, in these times.
I think that's very true. I mean, we are used to, you know, running a kitchen is very much about thinking on your feet, thinking on the spot. You know, when you're running a service, you need to be able to think quickly to be able to, say, fight fires, problem solve. So I think there is definitely that. I think probably the one thing I would say is we probably didn't think we'd be doing it 3 times over. But anyway, what do they say? Something breeds innovation.
Yes, necessity is the mother of invention. And that is certainly proving the case at the moment. So what are you going to be cooking for us today? I think this is a homage to the carrot and of course to Quorn, isn't it?
It is a homage to the carrot, the humble carrot, well, the not so humble carrot. So Today, yes, I work with a supplier who connect producers, farmers in Kent and East Sussex, and they deliver twice a week into London, called Shrub Provision. So I get these incredible carrots from them. They're wonky, they're misshapen, but the flavour is like nothing you've ever tasted before. It tastes like an actual carrot. So really simple. They're on the menu at Allswell. They're on the menu here at Tredwells as well. And just roasting them is kind of all you need to do to the carrot, because its natural sweetness comes out, its earthiness as well. So it is a homage to the carrot today. Also some Quorn in there to create a bit of the protein element to the dish effectively, and give it some texture as well. So I'm going to be making a carrot and Quorn croquette. So I've taken, again, my ethos with cookery is zero waste. So I've juiced some of those delicious carrots, and the pulp that was left over from the juice I'm going to use to make the croquettes with. And then I'm also going to be adding some crispy kale for some texture, a little sesame vinaigrette, which I'm going to be making with the carrot juice, and then some pickled carrots to finish just for a little bit of acidity.
My mouth is watering. I'm gutted I'm not in that kitchen. So we'll talk more about the sustainability emphasis that you have there, which is fantastic. But I'll let you start the dish, otherwise we won't get to taste anything, or the crew won't anyway.
Indeed. So just first of all, I'm going to start by taking the Quorn fillet and just grating it. So you could mince it, you could grate it, you could blend it, but that's a simple way to break it down. The way I look at Quorn is that it's an ingredient. It's not necessarily a finished product. And I think that's one thing that is useful for people to embrace and to think about, is how to get the protein into a plant-based dish and to be able to use, alternative proteins in a way that is as an ingredient as opposed to a finished product. So literally just grating this to break it down. It breaks down quite easily, as you can see. And then I'm going to add in the carrot pulp, also some toasted cumin seeds, which I've just ground up, some fresh ginger, some tahini, and bind it together with a little bit of the carrot juice.
I mean, there's loads of fibre in this as well. I mean, Quorn's really high in fibre, as of course is the carrot.
It is. That is one of the real positives about Quorn, actually, is the fibre content is incredible. And because it is effectively, it's a mycoprotein, so it's made by fermentation. So it's a really interesting kind of concept. I think a lot of people don't even know how it's made, but I've actually been to see it being made, and it's quite incredible what they do, actually.
I think this is true, actually, of a lot of the new plant-based thing. I mean, Quorn is the pioneer, really, of plant-based, really, of the 1960s. They must be rubbing their hands together going, we told you so. But there is possibly, sometimes people can tend to think this is processed food, but it's not. It's a natural product, isn't it? And it's really important to understand that.
Well, I think that the terminology processed food is a bit ambiguous, really, because most food goes through a process. But the process involved in Quorn is the fermentation, and then the freezing, which is what creates the kind of texture with it. So, relatively kind of natural processes in many ways.
Absolutely. So talking about the carrots again, I mean, this is another thing I think with getting people to embrace plant-based is go and source the best veg you can, because I think we've forgotten what, as you said, we don't know what carrots should taste like anymore.
Yeah, I think that is important. I think, a lot of people I've been talking to lately with, in my industry, especially that are on furlough, their incomes have been significantly reduced. So they, just naturally have been eating more vegetables. And again, I think sometimes people don't necessarily put the same effort into, sourcing vegetables as they do potentially with meat, and actually the same time involved in it as well, in terms of actually, maximizing the flavor that you can get from a vegetable. So I've got the grated Quorn, the carrot pulp. I'm putting a little bit of tahini in here as well. Got the ground cumin, and I'm just going to add some lemon zest, a bit of seasoning, and then we're ready to shape the croquettes.
This is a really important thing that you've raised here by just talking through those ingredients. It's about, when you're cooking with vegetables, it's about thinking about flavor as well. I think so in the past, the vegan or the vegetarian, the plant-based dish, whatever you want to call it, has been seen as like the poor relation to other dishes. But it's really important to see that as standing up against, equal to meat dishes, to fish dishes that you've got on the menu. And clearly that's what you do, looking at the balance of dishes that you have, both in Tredwells and Allswell. There isn't an emphasis on any particular type of cooking. It's just a great dish, and it so happens to be plant-based.
I think that is part of the kind of ethos, is that you shouldn't really feel like you're missing out on anything. And I think to get that depth of flavor, it's applying those cookery techniques that we apply to meat. And I think sometimes people forget that, you know, I always give the analogy that you would never steam a steak and eat it because it would be revolting, but we think nothing of doing that to vegetables. You know, it's that caramelization, it's that Maillard reaction, which has the same effect with a vegetable as it does with meat.
I wonder as well if as Brits, which obviously you're not, so maybe you're a bit more inspired on this one, but you know, we're known for, it was a bit like we were known for, what was it, the French called us le roast boeuf, or, you know, overcooked roast beef. But we're also known for just boiled veg until it's mushy. And this is kind of the reputation. But I mean, rarely do I boil veg these days. Maybe I par-cook it a little bit in water first. But you're roasting, and you know, you've got deep fried sprouts on the menu, for example, and which sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I would highly recommend that. Yeah, the best way to enjoy a sprout is to deep fry it. But I mean, let's face it, the best way to enjoy a lot of things is to deep fry them, which is coincidentally what I'm doing today. So just to finish off the croquettes, I've added the lemon zest, some salt. I've got some toasted sesame seeds. Again, talking about flavor, toasting them brings out so much more flavor than just using them raw. And I'm going to bind it together with a little bit of the reduced carrot juice.
So you're thinking clearly here, but it's all about balance of flavors, isn't it? You've got that sweetness of the carrot, you've got the acidity from the lemon juice in there. You know, you've even got those roasted elements as well. So it's a real balance.
Yeah, I think that is what's important. And I think when I look at developing dishes, it's layering of flavor, it's texture. It's also thinking about the whole dish and eating a whole plate of it. So I think sometimes you can have a bite of something and it tastes really good, but by the time you get to the end of it, it's either too sickly or it's not balanced or the texture's just a bit samey. So I think for me, it's all about creating that layer of flavor and then adding in, you know, you've got your acidity, you've got a little bit of sweetness potentially, some creaminess in there as well, some fattiness, and then some crunch in there in some respect as well. So from this dish, we've got the acidity from the pickled carrots, as I mentioned, and then a bit of crispy kale as well, just to give it some life really, and also a little bit of green to balance it on the eye as well.
Wonderful. So where did your interest in plant-based cooking come from? Because I mean, you're neither vegan or even vegetarian, but you've done this wonderful book called Planted, which is all plant-based dishes. Did this come out of a frustration or an interest or the sustainability angle? Where did it all originate?
So I've always loved vegetables. You know, obviously growing up in New Zealand, very privileged to have wonderful produce kind of all year round. And interestingly, we had to eat seasonally because we're such a small country and so isolated that anything imported was either, you know, A, really expensive, or B, just wasn't particularly great. And so for me, it was a natural thing to eat seasonally. I kind of didn't really know any other way. You know, I'd always really look forward to the first of the season, the asparagus, the strawberries. I've got a family who are orchardists in Central Otago, so even just kind of being exposed to that was a real privilege. And I think it's only been as I've got older that I've actually realized what that was. You know, as a child, you don't really understand necessarily a lot of that side of things. So I think for me, the plant-based was a natural kind of progression. And I think when I opened Tredwells, I really wanted it to be an inclusive place that anyone could come and eat here, and they didn't have to feel like the odd one out if they had an allergy or if they wanted, couldn't eat a particular thing. So for me, it was important that that was on the, featured on the menu. But interestingly, when I actually went to look for, I guess, resources, there wasn't much in the way of resources for chefs or for, something that was a bit special to have at home. So it was just kind of a natural progression that I thought, well, I'll write a book.
And a fantastic book it is. I mean, and what's great as well now is obviously there's now the HIT Chefs Academy doing this plant-based course. So now there are resources there for chefs to go to, and I'm sure you encourage your team to, do their research and look online and learn all the time.
I think that's one of the interesting things about, I guess, the journey that we've taken, from Tredwells and then moving on to Allswell, is how engaged the team have become. And, team members that probably didn't really know much about plant-based food or didn't really know much about how to be more, sustainable, for want of a better word, are now really embracing it and getting really excited by creating, finding ways of using things that we may not have used before that potentially normally would have gone in the bin, or that we can use from the farmers that we support as well. So it's definitely a learning curve and a journey. And I think it's great that everyone's kind of, we're all in it together in some respects. So just to talk about what we're doing, because I guess that's important. I've just shaped the croquettes with 2 spoons. Next step is to fry them. But before I do that, I'm just going to get the vinaigrette made. Really simple vinaigrette. So the reduced carrot juice from these amazing carrots. So it's a really amazing dark color and quite thick as well, which gives it some viscosity. I've got some sesame oil, again, just to enhance the sesame seeds that are in the croquettes and add a bit of richness to the dish overall, which is going to be cut through with some vermouth vinegar. Again, acidity, but it just also will add that finishing touch to the dish. So just whisking that together. That will just go over the top of the croquettes.
I think it's really important that using the carrot juice in a vinaigrette shows the importance of using the recipes as a guideline, and then using your imagination and your vision to add to that, to make it your own and to make it stand out.
Yeah, I think that is what I encourage as well, especially if people are cooking at home or even other chefs in their kitchens, is recipes are a guideline. Obviously with things like pastry, where there's a chemical reaction that happens, it's you're a bit less able to kind of tweak. But I think, we all take inspiration from each other. And I think it's about, taking that inspiration and perhaps using it something else. This dish could be quite easily done with parsnips or with, some other seasonal veg as well. So again, it's kind of that ability to keep things as seasonal as possible and for what works for you as well. Some people, certain things may not work for them. They may not be able to get certain ingredients. So it's about, I guess, putting your take on it in a way that works for you.
Absolutely. How's it looking?
So about to pop the croquettes into the fryer. I've got the carrots that I roasted just prior to starting this, actually. As you can see, they're kind of a bit misshapen, wonky. They do take a bit of scrubbing when they come in because they're pretty much caked in the lovely organic soil, but it's definitely worth the extra effort, in my opinion.
And that's a good thing, to have carrots coming in covered in soil, I think, not in a plastic bag.
Very true. And I think it's, they were literally harvested. I put the order in on a Sunday afternoon, and they come to me first thing Tuesday morning. So they're kind of harvested and brought to me straight away. So you kind of can't ask for better than that.
It's interesting we're talking about wonky carrots. I kind of think that's a normal carrot, isn't it? A dead straight carrot that's all the same size as the others in the pack or the bag. That's not right.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of, for me, it's also about wanting to support the farmers that, that have that great biodynamic organic way of working. And yes, sometimes it is a bit of extra work for us, kind of tweaking the carrots and, scrubbing them to get that that kind of dirt off. But at the end of the day, the flavors just, it's so much better. And I think it's interesting because with meat and fish, there's always that extra effort that has to happen, you know, scraping the bones or filleting. It's just part and parcel of it. And I think sometimes people don't associate that with vegetables at all. And I guess that's one thing that kind of maybe needs to change a bit as well.
I mean, the whole sustainability element of Tredwells, and of course, all as well. I mean, you've got part of your website is dedicated to sustainability, and it's really interesting reading through that, because lots of people now are talking about sustainability, quite rightly so. But you're kind of talking about the future. You're talking about the welfare of the planet. You're talking about single-use plastic. You're talking about not using cling film, where we were talking purely about just using local ingredients. The conversation has got a bit more global, hasn't it? I think maybe we're realizing the implications of our actions more on a global scale rather than just a local scale.
I think so. And I think it's when you look at, I guess, the notion of a circular economy, which is, I guess, where we need to be moving forward to, in my eyes, it's common sense. It makes sense that we repurpose, we reuse, we don't just keep creating, because what happens to all the other stuff? And I think, you know, it's been really interesting seeing what's happened through COVID, and I guess people's approach to, you know, to reuse, to repurpose. Also, when you couldn't necessarily get things, and I think if people have a bit more time on their hands, it's a bit easier to think, actually, you know, maybe I'll have a go at repairing that myself. In the first lockdown, I managed to repair my KitchenAid just purely from a YouTube video. So I think there's lots of ways and means of doing it. And it is interesting because I think that, you know, the word sustainability, I have a bit of an issue with, but there's no other alternative, because we don't want to sustain where we are now. We need to regenerate where we are. And I think, you know, regeneration and regenerative farming is definitely where things kind of need to get to.
And I think it gives an added responsibility and a great responsibility to the chef. The chef is no longer simply putting a plate of entertainment, if you like, out to a customer. There's this huge responsibility that goes with it, which is a great thing. And I think a great thing for the chef to embrace and understand.
I think so. I think it's, you know, if I think back to when I first started as a chef in London 16 years ago, you know, none of that stuff was even in my thought process about, you know, throwing peels in the bin, carrot tops, using cling film, you know, cutting the end off something because it needed to be kind of perfect. That wasn't even in my scope of thought. So I think as I've, I guess, kind of progressed and my experience has got a bit wider and actually noticing things that I didn't necessarily notice before. So just to interrupt quickly, we've got our croquettes ready to go, nice and golden and crunchy. I'm just going to quickly fry off the kale, which won't take long at all. It might kind of spiss a bit, but that's the way we go.
And have you found your brigade embracing of these plant-based dishes? Are they getting as excited about those as they are working with meat and fish?
Oh, just getting balls to you. They do actually. And I think that's been a really interesting journey as well, because traditionally, you know, it's probably a stereotype, but chefs used to get really excited about, you know, in a kitchen, I guess the pinnacle or the most senior section in the kitchen was generally the meat section. And once you kind of made it to the meat section, like you were one of the senior chefs in the kitchen, because it was seen as to be, you know, the hardest section. There was a lot of things you had to control and you had to really understand how to cook meat and fish. And so interestingly, to actually, I guess, flip that on its head, where, you know, for instance, here, our garnish section, which is all the vegetables, is the busiest section and probably the hardest one to be able to do. So to actually transform that thought process is also an interesting one. And I think when people come, you know, when I get new chefs come to start, it's also that training process of things we do. And my rule in the kitchen is anything we can eat doesn't go in the bin. So even just getting them into that thought process is quite different. And also understanding that you can make a really delicious creamy puree without any dairy in it. And that you can, you know, create a delicious mayonnaise just by using aquafaba. You don't necessarily need to use egg yolks, which also extends its shelf life. So there's lots of benefits that kind of happen with it. So it is an educational aspect for sure.
And I was going to say, even the sauce section has changed. I mean, you touched upon that a little bit, but I remember in my days, it was all, everything was veloutés and roux based, and obviously you could do a great roux with a plant-based butter or even oil. But now you could do your own cashew creams, for example, which you do, I think, at Tredwells.
We do, and I think that's, nuts are a great one because they add the creaminess, and I think that's always been one of my challenges with plant-based, is especially when it comes to pastries, how do you get that kind of creaminess in there without, back in the day it was kind of coconut milk was the only thing that was available, and then everything tastes like coconut because it's such an overpowering flavor. Whereas now there's a lot more things available, such as oat milk, oat cream, that actually you can get that flavor. And I think the cashew cream that we use, it's just blitzed cashews, so we ferment them for a bit to get a bit of sourness in there if that's what we want to use them for. But there's many ways to be able to kind of get that depth of flavor in there. So speaking of depth of flavor, I'm pretty much ready to plate the dish up. So we're going to start with the carrots, and as I said, they've just been roasted at a really, really high heat, so their sweetness is just kind of off the charts compared to what a carrot grown for yield, I would say, is like, versus a carrot grown for flavor in this really rich, amazing soil. So carrots on there, the croquettes on top. I've got the vinaigrette here as well. So again, this is just going to add a little bit of sweetness. We've got the nuttiness of the sesame in there and a little bit of the vinegar for some sharpness. So that's just going to go over the top. And then I've also got a little bit of the carrot pulp from the juice that I just dehydrated. So again, that's just going to add a burst of color, but also some crispiness in there as well. So that's going to go on top. And then we've got the pickled carrots, which are just pickled in a vinegar, touch of sugar for sweetness, and some salt in there as well. So again, just adding the acidity in there with a little bit of crunch as well. And that's just going to be finished with the crispy kale.
Amazing. Once again, I'm clearly absolutely gutted that I'm not in that kitchen. The way you've described it, the way you've described how you get those flavors in there, I could taste it in my head, but it's not the same thing. I can't wait for this lockdown to lift, as I'm sure you can't too, because I'm going to be straight down to London as soon as it does. Chantelle, thank you so much. That is absolutely inspiring. Best of luck with these wonderful endeavors you've got. And it's just fantastic work. Thank you so much. We're going to take a short break now, but when we return, we'll be heading into our last cooking segment with Mark, who is all set to produce a truly inspiring and original chocolate dessert.
Life, a miracle of our universe. 3.5 billion years old. It began as microorganisms, growing, expanding, dividing, flourishing, transforming our planet from this desolate husk of heat and fire, dust and dirt, into this rich and abundant garden of colour and consciousness, movements and thought. Even now, inside our bodies, microorganisms outnumber human cells 10 to 1. They're in the air we breathe, the food we eat. They affect how we act, how we think, how we feel. Outside our bodies, fungi, a unique type of microorganism, are genetically closer to animals than they are to plants. They breathe oxygen. They digest food. They even communicate via a vast network hidden deep beneath the earth. And our ancestors, they knew this, using fungi for food and medicine. But somehow we forgot the ancient partnership. Until recently. Amidst the cultural revolution of the swinging 60s, humans discovered mycoprotein, a nutritious superfood cultivated from a specific strain of fungi using the ancient art of fermentation, the same method used by our ancestors to preserve food and maintain a healthy diet. But fast forward to today, and a lot has changed. Life as we know it is under threat. Our air is polluted, our rivers are emptying, our forests are dying, our health is at risk. But this is where mycoprotein may be able to help. Using 90% less carbon, land and water than animal protein, mycoprotein is not only sustainable, but it's scalable and healthy. It's high in protein, high in fiber, low in saturated fats. It builds muscle faster than animal protein. It contains all 9 essential amino acids and has even been shown to lower cholesterol. A true food for our future, found hidden within the microorganisms that first populated our planet. Only now revealing the secrets that could one day change the fortunes for all. Where can you find this mycoprotein? Well, that might not be as hard as you think.
Welcome back, Chef. How are you doing?
I'm very well, Chef. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So I can see that you've got some pretty interesting ingredients laid out in front of you there, Mark. Perhaps not ones that we would traditionally associate with chocolate, let alone dessert. So maybe you want to start off by just talking us through the inspiration behind this dish.
Yeah, thank you, Chef. Going for the plant-forward movement and the thought process, especially with desserts. I'll be honest, I've got a real sweet tooth and I do like to end a meal with a decent pudding. And we have our classics and the flavour pairings that will never change. And a chef will put his own little spin on it and maybe an establishment will make it its signature. That's life and that's how these things will forever move. But with plant forward, I can sometimes think it gets a little bit neglected. So my first thought process was just making something wow, making something different. For me personally, I love pistachios. It's a flavor that never tires. I don't care what iteration it's in. I love it, even if it's just eating them as they are, salted, in a souffle, in an ice cream, all day long. It's where my eye will go on a menu, and that's where my taste wants to go. So I did that, and then I thought, how can we elevate this and marry sweetness, vegetables, for instance? Now, pumpkin pie, we're all aware of it. It divides a lot of opinion, quite frankly. But if you go to some of the high street coffee chains, you'll see a spiced pumpkin coffee on, and people buy it. But when it's roasted, Chef, and delicately spiced, it's a wonderful thing to eat. Would you agree?
Absolutely. It's like beetroot as well. I mean, you think of all these, vegetables that do actually can perform a fantastic dessert role in the right hands.
A beetroot and chocolate, a marriage made in heaven. That in a brownie, or, you know, if you're introducing children to food, we've got carrot cake. I adore a carrot cake, but grate a courgette through it as well. And when you cut it open, you've got the flecks of green and the flecks of orange. And it's a fantastic way to just get extra vitamins and minerals in. And as we alluded to earlier, it's hugely important, especially in this day and age, in this time in which we're living. With chocolate, I think one of its best friends is a peppery note. And for me, I thought, well, chocolate and pepper, it's been done. And I thought, I like radishes. Radishes have got that little fire that you're not quite expecting sometimes. Sometimes you can just have a radish, it's okay. And other ones you think, wow, and your mouth starts salivating and it really gets all your taste buds going. So I thought, how can I pair that with chocolate? A few sliced radishes on a plate, not very appealing, something you'd want in a salad, maybe on a breakfast buffet, definitely not on a dessert. I tried to cook them, I roasted them, not to great success, to be perfectly honest, not for my dessert anyway. And then I was reading some very, very old cookbooks, and these were ones from the turn of the 20th century, and I found a radish sorbet, and it was an Italian recipe, and I thought, huh? And it's that old age thinking, chef, of preservation, where things are great in season. Absolutely. Eat them when they're in season. They're at their best. Price, flavor, quality, but also to preserve. And it was a way of preserving radish. So it was almost a savory sorbet, but as a palate cleanser as well. So I had a little play. I needed to bring a little bit of sweetness to it. So I ran a few raspberries through the mix, which I would just cook down to your old classic coulis, as we would do when we were training to be a chef. And it just gave me that little bit of sweetness and balance. Then what I did, just to give it that floral note, was some pink peppercorns crushed through the mix. And then that would be strained and churned. And what I've come up with is a sorbet that I'm very, very proud of, and you'll see in the final dish later. One thing that has blew my mind since I've been working with this plant-forward way of thinking at HIT Training and the programs that we've delivered, silken tofu just screams, make me into a dessert. Does it not?
It does indeed. It's a wonderful ingredient, and it's so versatile as well. I mean, I've made scrambled egg many times with it. But yeah, I mean, as a dessert, it's got that texture, hasn't it? It's just got that silky texture.
Also, I find it incredibly easy to work with. You know, there's no fear of a splitting per se, or an overworking of it. It's just got already that foundation building block that can be used in so many different iterations, especially when it comes to dessert work. So I wanted to use silken tofu. And as part of our programs, you're covering Quorn, you're covering plant proteins such as seitan, tempeh. We're working with the tofus, and we're teaching our apprentices to work with not only the silken tofu, but the firm tofu as well. And just showing people the love and care and preparation that is required just as much as any other protein to bring yourself and create a beautiful dish. Now, to pair that, I've come up with a completely plant forward, no animal products within this dessert whatsoever. And I'm very, very proud of that. I find the market now for vegan friendly chocolate is fantastic. And one of the products that I love working with the most is cocoa nibs as well. And I wanted to bring that into my dish. So I've got a roasted cocoa nib tuile, which eats beautifully. The only problem I find with it, chef, is if you leave it out, there's not a lot left when you come back. So it's one of those little treasures you have to hide under your bench. With our Plant Forward program, we're trying to be as dynamic as we can. We've got this wonderful learning, this practical, driven way forward that's modern and it's fresh. We've got our innovative work-based IOWs, interactive workshops, where apprentices will log on and they will conduct a 3-hour workshop that involves videos, questions, discussions, just chucking ideas together and sharing best practice. People coming from all different scenarios, backgrounds, and their catering experience and journey to that point, sharing ideas. And you know what, chef, as I come off as a tutor off one of these IOWs, these interactive online workshops, you just sit back and think, wow, what have we done? You've made people buzz.
I think you've absolutely nailed it there, Mark, because it is all about, everything is about education. The world is about educating people. It makes the world a better place. I mean, full stop on the big level. But, you know, just talking there about tofu, I mean, before I went plant-based, I knew very little about tofu. And it was generally a sideline ingredient that rarely got used. And that was because I hadn't cooked it enough. I hadn't experimented with it enough. I didn't know about all the different textures, as you say, firm, silken, you know, all the different things that you can do with it, the way you get flavor into it, the way you press it. Once you know those things, it's totally empowering. And I think this is what is fantastic about what you're doing. You're empowering people. And once people have knowledge, then it's up to them where they take it. And then the dessert you're doing, it covers it all, doesn't it? I mean, just this experimentation with savory and sweet and balancing flavors. And remembering vegetables are full of natural sugars. So, you know, there you go straight away. You've got a nod to the dessert element of the dish just from the contents of the ingredients.
Completely. I'm going to just start very slowly assembling whilst chatting to you, because chef to chef, we could talk for hours and hours about food.
I can't go on.
That's what we do. So here I've got the pistachio cake that I've just cut into little fingers. And as you alluded to earlier, the sugars in vegetables shouldn't be discredited whatsoever. But I find when I'm cooking with the spinach, especially in this recipe, you get like a sweet, almost buttery note to it, and pair that with some roasted pistachio, you end up with this beautifully moist cake. And bringing the batter together for it, you do think, oh, this does look like it could be a journey too far for the oven and for, you know, setting it. But what happens is just that liquid evaporates off and you're just left with that concentrated flavor. It's got that depth of color. And it wouldn't be amiss anywhere on a plate for sure. But people would look at this menu, see spinach, see radish, and potentially be put off. But me and Richard are going to try to bring you around to our way of thinking. So I'm going to put the cake onto the plate. Now, the next element I brought together just a little vegan chocolate soil. I'm using vegan chocolate pellets. I'm just using a little liquid glucose and a tiny 10 grams, in fact, of a vegan butter. I bring that together, chef. So I bring the glucose and the sugar up to 150 degrees. I have everything weighed out ready. I have my chocolate and my butter ready. I take that off the heat, whisk, and you just end up with these beautiful rocks. Now that gives me a wonderful, wonderful texture, crunch, visually very dynamic. And also I find it's a wonderful base for things. So hence why I've got two other softer elements to be counteracted by this chef. I look back 20 odd years ago when I was training in pastry. If I was to say this is an idea I wanted to bring forward, I think I'd be put on the pots for a week. What do you think?
Well, I mean, maybe if people had tasted it, you'd have been out there and, you know, celebrated. But it's getting people to taste it in the first place, isn't it?
Completely. Are there any memorable tofu dishes that you've had, sweet or savory, chef, that you can think of or share with the audience at home?
Well, like I say, I mean, I do love doing my scrambled egg with silken tofu, and you can do it with firm tofu as well. But it's introducing those other flavors into it, like namak, kala namak, the Indian black salt, which smells like sulfur. And I put a little bit of that in, a little bit of turmeric, but not too much, otherwise, because you don't want it tasting of turmeric, but it's great for the color. And then sweating off finely diced onions, so soft, you don't actually see it, but it just adds that, and it melts in the mouth and it adds that flavor. I love doing that. I have to say, I've not used it in dessert yet, and I can't wait to try this out.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate that. So I'm going to build up my next element, which is the chocolate soil. And again, just a wonderful vehicle and carrier and to counterbalance. And again, with the Hit Chef Academy, we're trying to bring that thought process into the apprentices to think about balance, to think about taste. It shouldn't just be pretty. Obviously, people eat with the eyes. It comes out, human beings, it's what we do. We look and we think, wow, and we make a preconception. But what we'll do with the apprentices is we'll take them through the journey, even tasting tofu just in its natural form, which it doesn't carry a lot of flavor. We know that. But then it's that building of flavor, texture, to ultimately create a wonderful dish. And that brings just such a dynamic way of thinking as apprentices move forward in their careers, just sharing that knowledge. Knowledge is power, as we well know. I learn every day. I learn every day in this job, and I'm learning from people above me, people I meet, apprentices, anybody. Food can hit you, food inspiration can hit you from anywhere.
Absolutely.
Next element, chef, I'm going to go to the fridge and I'm going to get the chocolate parfait, and I'll show you how silky this is. So there we go. You can see the shine on it.
Oh yeah.
So again, egg free. We've got the tofu running through it. And a lot of these recipes, you'll see the use of avocado because we've got that fat content, and but it blitzes down. It's smooth. It gives us that instant fat and hold that we need. And again, that's tapered down with one of my favorite go-tos, the agave syrup. I love it. And you don't need a lot, chef. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
It can just get chucked in dessert sometimes and balance gets missed.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people forget that actually good chocolate, 70% plus as well, cocoa solids, is generally vegan. And
yes.
So many people have said to me, oh, I miss chocolate. I'm like, well, maybe Cadbury's Dairy Milk or whatever, milk chocolate. Yeah. But not a great quality dark chocolate. You can have it all day long, and it's got great health-giving properties, particularly the nibs.
Completely. Look, reading into chocolate and cocoa, it's been used for thousands and thousands of years. People have really harnessed it, not only from their diet, for beauty products, for medicine. It's amazing what you can do with it.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to take a lovely little scoop of the mousse, and I'm just going to lay that onto my dish, like so. There we go, and shake that off.
I think it's so important what you're doing here and the way that you've approached and embraced this dessert, because so often you can go to a restaurant and they may have a great plant-based offering across the menu, but then you get to desserts and it's like, all there is maybe just a sorbet or something. They just haven't thought it through. And you've got to end a meal on a high note, because
completely.
That's the last thing people remember. It's a classic sales and marketing tool.
But it's the journey as well, chef, isn't it? It's that journey from starter to dessert. And again,
Absolutely.
Everything in balance, not gargantuan portions as well. Just something that you can leave you full. That's the key. That's a great skill of a chef, that you leave full and happy, but not uncomfortable,
Exactly.
So the next element of the dish, and it's just to bring a bit of fire, a bit of punch, it's a roasted radish puree that I've done. And again, the blood red of it is fantastic. And I've just run a few little frozen raspberries through it. Now, I appreciate that's in my sorbet element of my dessert, but I've done it the other way. So the ratio has changed, just so I've got that little bit of bite. I think with all desserts, you shouldn't just be sweet. We need to just create that little magic on the palate.
Absolutely.
So I'll put that on, and again, we don't need a lot of it. I don't want to overpower people. I want people to take a mouthful of everything, and then just let their imaginations run wild. The next stage of the dessert is going to be the radish sorbet, which I'm very, very proud of. Now, a lot less intensive in color, as you can see, but you've got that radish red to it, that skin. And I'm just going to run a little quenelle of that onto the plate as well. So the cake here is warm, and we've got those colder elements as well. So again, we've got that temperature change within the mouth that can really excite the diner, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is a masterclass, isn't it, in balancing flavors, balancing tastes, and balancing texture. And it's important, isn't it, to distinguish between flavor and taste as well, which it's hitting all those spots on the tongue. Completely,
chef. I think it's one of those ones, the skill of a chef can be seen pretty much instantly when you just put that first mouthful in and you think they've really thought about this. So the radish sorbet is on. And the next, the cocoa nib tuile, the crunch.
The snap, absolutely.
Absolutely fantastic. They taste amazing. and they're almost see-through. I've managed to roll them that thin. I thought I'd better impress Richard Fox. I didn't want to let him down.
And nibs are just the crushed up bean, aren't they? From the cocoa.
But they've got such a wonderful use. I use them in game dishes as well as desserts. I think chocolate and game is one of those things, and it's just getting people to utilize products that maybe don't get touched. You know, for instance, we spoke earlier about banana blossom, and we're finding that in supermarkets now, and it's a wonderful product. Yeah,
jackfruit as well is one of those things that people had never come across in it before, and now that's appearing on supermarket shelves.
Completely and utterly. And that, again, a can of that is so cost effective for a family. I can feed 4 people with 1 can of jackfruit and a little bit of imagination. It's amazing what you can do with that. And again, your imagination's your only barrier here. You can take it wherever you like. If you like it curried, if you like it spiced, if you liked it milder, it will take any flavor.
And there's nothing wrong with these ingredients that in themselves don't have a huge amount of flavor, like tofu, like jackfruit, because that as a chef then goes, but it's a carrier of the flavor and a carrier of texture. So how are you going to get the flavor in there? It's a wonderful challenge.
And I find with these dishes, chef, that if you make them, and like you would a curry, allow it 24 hours to mature, you know, think ahead, prep ahead, maybe you cook double. The flavor is just phenomenal. The flavor is fantastic the next day. You know, a curry just completely changes. I know a lot of chefs that make their curries or their sauces, vac pack them and leave them for a week in the freezer and get them back out, and you have a completely changed beast.
Yeah, for sure.
I've got now just the final touch for the dessert, just some wonderful little florigano flowers. I get that aniseedy, that floral note from it. Completely and utterly edible. They're not here just for frills and whistles. I'm going to just put a couple of these on the dish. And then again, I'm going to just show off a little bit to you. And I'm really, really sorry that you can't be here, Chef.
Once again, give it a couple of months. And also, I think there's also a perception which is changing now, and you're certainly helping to change that perception. That, you know, ingredients like butter, cream, milk, all these eggs, totally, you know, dessert standards. People tend to think, oh well, I can't do plant-based desserts because I can't use those ingredients. But there is now the possibility, as you've said yourself quite rightly, there's some great plant-based butters out there. There's now great plant-based creams out there. There's the plant milks, and egg can be simulated in so many different ways now as well.
Completely, chef. I mean, aquafaba, what a product that was. I mean, the amount of gallons I think I've poured down sinks in the day, it hurts me. I think if you work it out, the cost of eggs, and compare that to the meringue that you can make with just the residual liquid from a can of chickpeas, the money saving that a kitchen can put in place is fantastic. Also, you can leave it whipping away, never goes over.
I remember the very first time I made meringues with aquafaba, chickpea water, for anybody who doesn't know. And I remember as I was doing it, I was thinking, how is this going to work? You know, I'd read about it, I'd studied it, I'd looked at it, I thought, this can't be possible. And they were just sensational. And it was a real eureka moment. And you felt like you'd done some kind of alchemy. And that is such a rewarding thing to do, I think, as a chef. And I've found as well, I think, since becoming plant-based, my cooking has perhaps got better because it's made me think in a different way and thinking much more, be more focused about things, perhaps. You get jaded as well as you know, there's chefs out there probably thinking, I'm getting bored with what I do. Try some plant-based dishes. You'll be amazed how you reinvigorate it for your cooking.
Completely and utterly agree. And it's that no waste element as well. The amount of things, you know, banana blossom, you wouldn't have heard of that 5 years ago. It's everywhere. Jackfruit, the same. Aquafaba, using the chickpea water, make a mayonnaise, make a meringue. Like you say, it mimics egg protein.
Yeah.
Perfectly. A little bit more work, that is it. But it's no waste. It's a no-brainer. As we did with the previous dish, I'm very, very sorry that you can't be here, but I've created this wonderful, wonderful dish involving, believe it or not, everybody, spinach and radish on your dessert, paired with chocolate, wonderful silken tofu, pistachio. We've got sweet, we've got sour, we've got hot, we've got cold, we've got soft, we've got crunch. I think that's everything a dessert should have, chef. Do you not agree?
I think you've epitomized everything about plant forward there in that bowl. It's absolutely fantastic. Mark, thank you so much. You know, learning is one of the greatest things you can do in life, and you are providing that that for people and for chefs and for the industry at a time that it really needs it the most. So congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Chef. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, welcome back. If that doesn't give you some plant-based inspiration, I don't know what does. What do you think of that, guys? Isn't that incredible? Well, you know it is, Mark. Anyway, you were the one who made it.
Yeah, I'm very proud of those.
Amazing.
So welcome back.
I'm very hungry.
Everybody. Yes, exactly. Did you actually get to eat that in the end? Did you share that with the crew, Mark?
I didn't have a chance.
No, I bet you didn't. So yeah, welcome back, everybody. And this is time now for our Q&A, where you've got the opportunity to put your questions to our marvellous panel here that are eagerly awaiting those questions. So please do send them over to us. I just want to give you some news, actually, hot off the press. Perfect timing for this. I don't know if you guys know about this, but you will do now. Congratulations to Chantelle, who has just been awarded a Michelin Green Star yesterday. So that really is amazing news. This is a totally new Michelin. Yeah, a round of applause indeed, well deserved. A totally new initiative by Michelin to recognise excellence in sustainable gastronomy, and she is just one of 23 chefs to receive that in the UK. So huge congratulations to Chantelle, and a perfect way, I think, to introduce our panel session. Clearly, we're all onto something here. Claire, I want to bring you in first, actually, seeing your time was cut a little short in the first section. I apologise for. So basically, it seems I want to talk a little bit about the real drivers here for plant-based. I mean, clearly, sustainability and a healthy lifestyle are the main drivers. And I think they've become mutually inseparable as well. I mean, we can no longer think about our own health without embracing planetary health. This is, I mean, and these are key messages, obviously. This is part of Quorn's philosophy. Do you think that we're seeing a move now and a change in the way we approach food, the like of which we possibly haven't seen since wartime?
I think so, yes. I think the current times have made us think a little bit more about our impact, both in terms of what we eat and what we put into ourselves and our own health, but also the collective health of the planet. I think we've seen the impact of stopping certain behaviours, etc., in terms of how our planet can then rejuvenate and move forward. And I think people have realised that actually they have a really good part to play in that actually our diets and the way we consume food and what we consume is very important, and a big move in that. And the biggest carbon reduction you can make in your diet is to move to a meat-free diet. So I think absolutely, since almost Quorn was started as a response to looking at food and the scarceness that could happen in the future, I think we're back in that position of again looking about what the food is. I think it's also coupled with the desire to eat delicious food. And I think, you know, having survived going through the 3 lockdowns, we're all very much about finding comfort and deliciousness wherever we can. So I think that's heightened our desire for delicious food, and therefore, as we come back out of this, and as we do now, as Mark talked about, like delivery and takeout, you know, they're all opportunities for us to look at how we make sure that there's meat-free, plant-based dishes that are absolutely delicious and stand up in their own right.
I mean, I think this is key. I mean, flavour is everything as well in this. And I mean, chefs, have you changed your approach to plant-based yourselves? You know, rather than seeing it as something that you have to add on a menu, you know, or the way that you pass on your knowledge to other chefs, it's no longer something that's an add-on, you know, reluctant addition to a menu. The plant-based dish, and I think Chantelle perfectly illustrates this with her menus, must stand up in its own right next to the animal-based dishes that you have on the menu. Whoever would like to pick that up. I mean, maybe Mark, do you want to, you were doing the cooking there.
Yeah, sure, Chef. My thought process is, and especially as we've just developed the program and we've moved forward with our thought process, is it's not that neglected part of a menu. It's not that neglected part of cuisine now. I apply all those foundations of culinary training that I had in the exact same way. It just challenges me to think a bit better. An ingredient may react differently. It may take longer, may take less, may need something else. But if I use that core grounding, I apply that to Plant Forward, as we have done for our standard for this workshop and this program that we've developed. As much love goes into our stocks and sauces than any classical sauce.
Rory and Paul, when you were putting together the course, was this very much at the forefront of your mind when you were structuring it, about this sort of focus on flavour and inspiring chefs to get involved on that basis?
Yeah, I think definitely. The thing is, sometimes we take chefs and they've already seen certain elements with a lot of animal-based ingredients, but they're very raw, for want of a better word, when it comes to plant-based ingredients. So for me, it's just all about getting them excited about it, you know, and getting that drive that we've got from working with it for for quite a while now, and giving it to them as well.
Paul, would you reiterate that, and how did it impact on your decisions to get this course up and running or create it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's been about inclusivity as well. You know, if you're going out to eat a meal, and you're a vegan or vegetarian, or it could be the host of that group, you don't want to feel like the poor relation. You know, gone are the days when you can, put a nut loaf out of the freezer, or I think we need to look and celebrate, plant-based food, and just vegetables. Take a humble carrot, an onion, and actually get the absolute most out of it in terms of flavour and what you can do with it.
I think Chantelle illustrated that, didn't she, in her dish? It makes our sourcing of ingredients so much more important, because you've got to elicit every bit of flavour out of them that you possibly can. I just want to talk a little bit about hospitality in comparison to retail, if you like, at the moment. I mean, I always think that the supermarket shelves are a great barometer to consumer demand. Now, and when you go into the supermarkets now, it seems like not a day goes by before there's another plant-based product on the shelves. Do you feel that hospitality is still playing catch-up with consumer demand there? I mean, Claire, I'd be interested to hear what you think, because you sit from both sides. I mean, you've got your product out there on the supermarket shelves, you're in food service, you're battling away on the front line there to get chefs to embrace it. Are you seeing a disparity, which is obviously being helped to, these guys are helping to fill that gap?
Yeah, I think we're actually seeing a real move to close that gap, I think, in the hospitality. I think as people started to see the deliciousness and the versatility of what meat-free could do, and how they could actually use that in their diets, I think we're very much seeing that, and actually we're seeing all of the combined expertise, skill, and passion of hospitality coming behind the plant-based move to kind of create those dishes. I think obviously it helped from a consumer demand perspective to start to see some of the big QSR, the kind of burger restaurants like KFC and people like Greg's look to showcase how you can have those delicious products but with meat-free, and really again about showcasing the quality of the protein that you can get to work in those dishes. But we're definitely seeing now that if you look at any menu, that the meat-free dishes are very much part of the main menu. So I think the biggest thing we've seen is it's no longer, as I think Paul, it's all about the inclusivity. It's not the special menu that comes out from the back anymore, or you're almost friends roll their eyes when you want to choose a vegan or a vegetarian restaurant. These are restaurants now, that are top of the list of places people want to go. I think when you've seen the really exciting news, obviously Chantelle getting her and the inclusion of Michelin in sustainable and green restaurants, but also the first Michelin star go to a vegan restaurant over in France as well. So I think absolutely the gap is closing, and this is a really exciting time for hospitality.
I mean, I think this brings us on, doesn't it, perfectly to talking about the concept of the flexitarian. I mean, I saw a very interesting statistic recently from 2018. Even then, 92% of plant-based meals consumed in the UK were consumed by non-vegans. So this is a really interesting point. In the past, restaurants were putting, plant-based meals, vegan meals, whatever they wanted to call them, then on the menus because they thought they were catering specifically for that interest group. That is no longer the case, clearly. Who wants to pick that up? Perhaps, Paul, was this something very much in your mind when you were putting the course together?
Yeah, I think for me, it's about acknowledging all those different facets of, the plant-forward sort of consumer base. We look at the flexitarians, people that maybe it is meat-free Monday, maybe it's health choices, maybe sometimes it's economic choices, and that's kind of a role the supermarkets fulfill as well to a degree. It's almost that entry level. This is what you can do, but greater if you can work it out. Work it from home, actually produce it yourself, but also it acknowledges vegetarians and vegans. So this program is suitable for everybody, and it definitely went into our thought process. I know when Rory and I sat down, it was, we need to cover all of this, but at the heart of it, it has to be plants and plant-based protein.
Yeah.
What would you go? Sorry, Rory.
No,
I was going
to add to that. Like every unit that we designed, we ensured that although there was going to be the plant-based elements there, it was going to make sure that they were still there to be inclusive and, like Paul said, to be flexible with the approach, not just to dictate that it has to all be completely 100% plant-based, but it has to include those elements to it.
Have you noticed, I mean, there must be resistance in certain areas of the, particularly the old school chef, I guess. What would you say to those chefs who are perhaps still resistant to the idea based on the fact that they, perhaps don't believe that you can really elicit that kind of flavor from something that isn't animal based? Mark, maybe what's your opinion? You've expressed it very well in your demos.
Thank you. Yeah, my advice would be to embrace it. It's just a different ingredient. It's nothing to be challenged of. We're in kitchens for a reason. We're curious creatures. We love food. We should love to educate ourselves every day. That's the reason I'm in this industry. Every day I learn. And also this up and coming brigade of apprentices that go through HIT training, maybe start off with a bag of Quorn from mum's freezer and get in the kitchen and start and get that fire. This up and coming generation, they've already got this knowledge. We need to embrace it. We need to learn it, and we need not to be scared of it. It's nothing to be scared of. It's the future.
I mean, I guess what's been very challenging putting together the course is that you are not just putting something together for new young chefs at apprentice level. You're actually having to put stuff together as well to educate those, senior chefs, maybe at head chef and even executive chef level. That must have presented some serious challenges. I think that's one for Paul and Rory.
I'll let Rory take that one.
Absolutely. I've had quite a bit of experience, but when I first started as an apprentice, quite a few years ago now, my first head chef didn't even acknowledge vegetarian food on the menu. It was something that if he called in advance, maybe he'd whip something up. And I always kind of looked at that guy and thinking, right, you know what, could we deliver this to that chef? So again, it's all about trying to be as innovative and exciting as possible. If I was met with a chef that was still, put those barriers up, I'd do something like what Mark did in the demos. I'd cook something for them, something interesting, and showcase what some of these plant-based ingredients can taste like, just with a little bit of innovation.
I mean, Claire, I guess your development kitchen must be an exciting place to be at the moment. I mean, is there a buzz around? I mean, because the change that has happened in the last few years has been absolutely remarkable. And you must be feeling that as an organisation enormously.
Yeah, definitely. I think our development kitchens are a little bit dispersed at the moment and have become people's kitchens in our chef team. But I don't think the desire has gone anywhere, even if potentially some of the they have to do their own washing up, etc. at the moment. But I think, yeah, absolutely, we've strengthened our chef team as well. So we've just seen, you know, the demand from our customers to support development, etc., and also to look to new dishes. And yeah, absolutely, there's inspiration at all levels. And I think just, you know, going back to the kind of chef attitude, it's always for me, I think, I don't know, recently Neil Rankin was in the Veganuary issue of the Caterer. Now, obviously, Neil Rankin is very much a meat chef, you know, is built very much up from that in his restaurant, but he was very, you know, quoted as saying, you know, if operators are going to ignore plant-based, you're going to get left behind. And I think it just shows cases that, you know, you don't have to be in, you know, you can have both mindsets of the meat and then, you know, looking at plant protein as the way forward, that it is very much an exciting time, and chefs are embracing that. And ultimately, yes, for us, it's great because it really showcases how we can use Quorn and be so versatile, which for us is our passion and is what we're here to help and support with.
And again, you know, I think we talk about vindication. You just mentioned it earlier on, the news of the very first Michelin-starred plant-based restaurant in France is, you know, this is what the industry needs to really embrace this, is that top level endorsement, isn't it?
Absolutely.
What do you expect? This is actually a question, you've answered it to a degree, but what do you think can we expect next from plant-based? What do you think are the future trends? We read things, you know, about lab-grown meat and so forth. Do we see this as something that might, you know, have traction in the future, or do you think we're still a long way behind that? Again, Claire, but perhaps you want to give me your thoughts on that. Put you on the spot.
I guess, yeah, that's fine. I think for, you know, it's always, and it's an exciting market. You know, as we've talked about, Quorn's been around from the beginning and pioneered that market. And so for us, it's always exciting when innovation and developments come in. It shows that people are engaging in the market and that they really want to drive it forward. So I think that's all, you know, that's really exciting. And for us, ultimately, it's really focusing on our, you know, fermentation process, as Mark very kindly talked about, and Chantelle in their demos. And we, you know, looking at how that enhances the food that we can offer, and looking at how we improve and, you know, look at that for the future. But yeah, I think it's an exciting time to be in the market because there are just so many innovations and developments coming through.
Can I ask Mark and Rory, this is a question that's come through as well. What are you guys planning and looking forward to sampling and cooking with, obviously on a plant-based level?
Rory first? Oh, me first.
I think
even better. I've just...
It's, go on, Mark.
Oh, go on. I'm sorry, there's a lag. It's awful. For me, it is just constantly, as long as I keep my finger on the pulse, like anything, and social media is huge now. I think the stuff that comes to the forefront of your phone, you know, on your laptop, whatever. I've just seen pulled pork banana peel. I mean, what? Talk about no waste. So, you know, that was scribbled down at 8 o'clock this morning. I'm going to do that for lunch. You know, it's always innovating, always looking.
Rory?
Yeah, I definitely echo that. You know, we at the Academy, we're always looking for new ideas to get some of our apprentices excited. Sometimes our apprentices come with exciting ideas as well. And I know that when we launch with this program, the candidates will be doing exactly the same thing. They'll be coming with their own ideas, and it's looking towards people in the industry for what they want to do as well. You know, we had a guy last year at one of our workshops. We had a little food truck outside that sells vegan food, and they do very good replica burgers, but it's sold out. So we did those for lunch, you know, and it was something that he took back to his restaurant and put on the menu a couple of days later. So I think especially younger people, you know, looking towards what they want to do and different innovations that they've got.
That's a really interesting point. I think before lockdown, before we'd ever heard of coronavirus, we were seeing a resurgence of street food. I think that was being reflected at a lot of the shows, and you talk quality cooking, and there was a lot of plant-based cooking going on there. I mean, you guys working with restaurants, working across the board with food service, where do you look for? Do you look to those areas for inspiration for dishes? From street food, from different cultures, from people with different backgrounds and so forth. How do you go about sourcing your inspiration? Paul, can I put that question to you?
Yeah, very much. I mean, as Mark said and Rory alluded to, it's about keeping your finger on the pulse. It's about seeing these emerging styles. I think we can learn a lot from different cultures. A lot of cultures have been working kind of exclusively with plant-based and vegetable-based dishes. Some, in fact, more so than meat. So it's always about casting your net wide, looking at what's happening. We work with some amazing restaurants. We're really fortunate to work with some of the best in the industry, through our contract caterers to restaurants to small independents. I think we pride ourselves in talking to those chefs, having some sort of catch-up time. I recently had a conversation with Akhtar Islam about how he develops his dishes and how historically and culturally they are, these are ancient recipes, but again, very much embracing, vegetables, pulses, the spice mixing and things like that. So I think, we need to keep current. We need to make sure that we are very much keeping an eye on what's going on. And, I encourage all of the guys to develop, to sort of, train, to practice, because I think, it makes you better chefs. But I think, as we all agree, you learn every day, every single day, whether it's social media, a book, talking to people, it's one of the best things about this industry. You're always evolving, you're always learning.
I think this is one of the key factors in getting chefs excited about this and interested, is the joy of learning. There's people out there, I'm sure, who think they know it all, and we know full well that that's never going to be the case. But this is a wonderful way to re-energize your passion for cooking, isn't it? Claire, you're cooking in the home. You're not cooking professionally. How have you responded to the movement and to what Quorn are doing with your own cooking? Is that putting you on the spot a bit, isn't it?
I might need to join the course. I think it's always about being inspired, and I think that is, at the moment there is just so much, as we just talked about, inspiration coming from all angles. I think the move at the moment with restaurants even delivering to your home, I'm very lucky to have eaten at places like the Black Swan at Old Said, etc., and seeing some of those inspiration and how they're using ingredients, just showcases what you can actually experiment, even as a humble home cook rather than an actual professional chef. But I think we've responded with this course as well, just to insight from the industry and from chefs we work with and working with here around, everyone needs a little bit of inspiration and help at some point when some of these trends come along, and like how we, as Rory said, can harness people's ideas and the skills that the young the chefs are bringing through, how we can develop. I think we've joked a lot about we want to put down the gauntlet of the world of the first Quorn dessert as part of this course. Mark's dessert was delicious, but I think we can raise up a level if we can look at the first Quorn dessert as a result of the course.
Absolutely. So on the basis that I'm sure you guys are all inspiring people out there who are watching this, and I'm sure they want to know a little bit more about how they can actually sign up for the course when it starts. So I don't know, Rory or Paul, I guess that's a question for you.
Go on, Rory, you can have that one.
Well, there's always the website, and hittraining.co.uk is the best place to go for that as well. I think is the best place to go for that, and I know it's going to be on the end of today's webinar as well.
Brilliant. And I think actually it's very important for anybody who's remotely skeptical out there. It's important to look at what the youth are doing here, because they are our future. There are certainly the future customers in hospitality, if not current ones. Apparently 10% of British children aged 8 to 16 are vegan or vegetarian. 44% are trying to eat less meat, dairy and eggs. This is a trend amongst young people that's only going to grow. I mean, we just have to look at the work of Greta Thunberg, don't we, to see how young people are inspiring young people to make changes. We can't ignore this groundswell of interest from youth, can we, in the industry?
No, definitely not. And they're very passionate as well about the future of the planet. And realistically, I think there's quotes a lot about we're borrowing the planet from future generations, and very much, they are the guys that are going to inherit the future world, and we almost owe it to them to create a world that they can enjoy, and that they, has the abundance of food that we've been able to enjoy by looking at how we can change our patterns. And I think, their demand for us to do better is what needs to drive us on, really, to promote, meat-free eating across the industry, so that they have that opportunity. And actually, they are the generation that will really grow up with meat-free eating as part of what they do. So actually, they are going to be very demanding once they are of age to come out and eat in restaurants and be those, and be the future chefs. They are genuinely going to be the people driving some of that change as well.
Guys, I think that's a perfect place to end, is that looking at the future, because that's what we all need to be doing now in the industry, being optimistic, getting inspired for everything that we've all been through in the last 12 months or so. Thank you to everybody out there who's attended this. Guys, thank you so much, Claire, Paul, Rory and Mark, for your time, expertise, and for this fantastic course. If you would like more information about the HIT Chef Training Academy program, or about Quorn Foods, of course, the contact details will appear at the end. The course first cohort will begin in April. Is that right, Paul? Are we starting in April? Yeah, fantastic.
April, May time.
And you can, sorry?
April, May, yeah.
April, May, perfect. And you can contact the HIT Chef Academy or visit the HIT training website. In the meantime, I know on behalf of everyone here at HIT and Quorn, we wish you the very best for the future, personally and professionally. Thank you so much, and keep safe, everybody.